An avid waterfowl hunter knows the best harvest opportunities stem from good brood numbers and productive nesting habitat. Mike Szymanski, waterfowl biologist, provides an insight to what hunters can expect this fall. I'm Mike Anderson with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Mike, 1 year ago, we were in a major drought. Had some moisture this spring, summer. How are things looking for waterfowl?
Sure, Mike. We had a huge turnaround on our landscape again this year, going back from super dry to really pretty wet this spring. We had a big blizzard, historic blizzard in mid-April. Eastern part of the state had some subsequent blizzards, and then we had pretty good rainfall throughout May and into June. So the landscape had a huge turnaround this spring, coming into our second wettest, or second highest wetland index during our May survey.
Okay, and plenty of ducks?
Yeah, we had fair duck numbers this year. You know, it's kind of one of those things where we've had a little bit lower production the last few years, and you know, having the wetland index being so good, such good wetland habitat conditions this spring, but we had our 23rd highest breeding population index for ducks and our 25th highest population index for mallards.
Okay, and how are your brood surveys?
Our brood surveys turned out pretty well. Again, it was an interesting year just with that blizzard coming in. You know, we were starting to have ducks show up in the state and it was really dry. So some ducks were passing through, but then the blizzard just, you know, it hit hard and it hung on for quite a while. So it disrupted some early nesting efforts, particularly for mallards. And part of that's also just coming out of drought as well. You know, our landscape was in pretty tough shape this spring, and the moisture fixed it pretty well. But, you know, for a good part of May, our nesting cover was still just kind of catching up, and mallards are early nesters. So mallards were hit a little bit by the rough landscape, but coming out of May into June, things started to recover quite a bit. So, you know, our mallard brood index was down quite a bit from what we've seen during the recent high times, 94 through 2020. But our other species did really well, matching up pretty well with those previous averages from 1994 to 2020, particularly blue-winged teal. Blue-winged teal did exceptionally well this year. Also doing really well were our overwater nesters like redheads and canvasbacks. They had an exceptional year for brood production.
How about like pintails, Mike? How are the pintail numbers doing?
Yeah, all of our upland nesting species really did pretty well matching up with those longer term averages. Pintails were right on the mark, shovelers, gadwall. But yeah, like I said, blue wings really did well this year.
Okay, how about, you know, a lot of waterfowl hunters want to know how things were in Canada. Was it pretty dry in Canada?
So Canadian production for ducks in general is probably going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. Eastern Saskatchewan should have been fair to good. Manitoba should have been fair to good. But Western and Central Saskatchewan were still pretty dry. And that's where we get a lot of ducks from in our fall flight. So it's going to be a little bit of spotty, you know, for production coming out of Canada this year.
Mike, let's move on to geese.
So yeah, I mean, as usual, our Canada goose numbers are really good. You know, it was looking early on like the April blizzard might have really impacted their production, but they had a pretty prolonged breeding effort this year and actually did fairly well. So, you know, that combined with a very high goose population in North Dakota, Canada goose hunting prospects in the state will probably be one of our most dependable options for hunters. So our prospects for goose hunting on, you know, snow geese, Ross's geese that are coming out of the Arctic, little Canadas, should be pretty good. Hunters should expect to see decent numbers of young birds that are a little bit easier to decoy this year. It'll probably be a little spotty, you know, depending on what's coming through from different parts of the Arctic, but we're not expecting any of the extremes of, you know, lots of juveniles or no production. So we should be all right in that regard.
Mike, any changes to the waterfowl season this fall?
Yeah, we had kind of a minor change this year where mergansers are now included in the duck bag limit. For a number of years we had mergansers separated out with their own bag. Now they are combined in the duck bag limit. With that change, we were able to eliminate the hooded merganser species-specific restriction. So that helps simplify things a little bit for hunters. Otherwise, it's the same species-specific harvest regulations for ducks. 5 drake mallards, 2 hens, 3 wood ducks, 2 redheads, 2 canvasbacks, 1 scaup, 1 pintail.
Mike, any advice for waterfowl hunters hitting the field this fall?
Well, I think really importantly is to scout around a little bit. You know, conditions have changed pretty dramatically since the spring. It's dried up a lot. We're continuing to dry up. We'll do a fall wetland survey here in September, and we'll get a news release out, you know, describing those conditions. Also importantly, hunters need to make sure they're checking both electronic posting and physical posting. We do have a fair number of electronically posted acres now, but places that aren't electronically posted can still be physically posted. Of course, folks need to check out ANS, aquatic nuisance species advice and guidelines for regulations, particularly when they're going in and out of wetland habitats. Also with the dryness, we do have a pretty substantial fire risk on the landscape right now. We had a lot of vegetation growth from our wet spring, and people need to be really mindful of what they're driving through and where they're parking. People should not be parking in tall standing vegetation.
And be mindful of farmers harvesting at this time of year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you're staying out of folks' paths when they're trying to go in and out of fields. Don't be parking right on the edge of the road. You know, you need to get off the roadways because folks with big equipment are going to be coming through this fall.
Mike, overall waterfowl season should be good?
Should be fair. I mean, we got some good opportunities out there. Folks will need to check around a little bit. Be mindful of the weather too. That can always change how things are going real fast. I really think it'd be a good idea for folks to take advantage of blue and teal opportunities early in the season while we still have some of those birds around.
A lot of great information, Mike. Thank you.